ESPN's way too early top 25 for next season has UCLA as a top 10 team, even without Aday Mara. Hope is not lost. And some shocking women's basketball transfer news. Huh?
You are Locked On UCLA, your daily podcast on the UCLA Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to this edition of the Locked On UCLA Podcast. I'm your host, Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer. Thanks for making this show your first listen each and every day. It's free wherever you get your podcast, and it's available on YouTube. Like, comment, subscribe, download. Thanks for your support. It's your team every day. And this episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Where we get started today, I was just perusing, generally the day after a national championship game, Florida winning it, then, they like to, ESPN or other outlets will post their way too early top 25 rankings. And funny enough, so many guys have already moved in the portal or decided they're staying or leaving, found new homes, that it might be a fairly accurate representation of what it might look like in a couple months' time, for the most part. So, reading what Jeff Borzello posted with ESPN, he went over his way too early top 25. And let's go over the top 10. Number 1 is Houston, okay? Houston is the potential number 1. There's still a lot of things that can move around for any team, but Houston's number 1. Purdue, right at number 2. Okay, right on cue. Louisville, with what they've done already in the portal, rated number 3. Okay. UConn, okay, number 4. All right, Michigan's done a fantastic job so far in the portal. So that's already 2 Big Ten teams in the top 5. And where does that leave UCLA, who finished 4th last year, mind you, in the Big Ten? Okay, let's keep that in mind. Kentucky with Mark Pope in another year, number 6. They have Coach Cal at Arkansas, number 7. Interesting. Duke in their post-Cooper Flag, post-Final Four collapse. They are still number 8, depending on how things play out. St. John's with Rick Pitino. Okay, expecting them to be number 9, which means, as I teased, UCLA listed as a top 10 team. Yes, this is written with the knowledge of Aday Mara not returning, with the knowledge of the guys coming in, and of course, the hype, the energy that putting a big, hefty paycheck in the NIL pockets of Donovan Dent, bringing the Mountain West Player of the Year from New Mexico to UCLA is a huge, big-time get. Big time. Absolutely game-changing. We cannot forget the importance of Donovan Dent, a shooting, scoring, defending, rebounding, passing guard that UCLA does not have. In my mind, with Dent's arrival to UCLA, it takes a lot of pressure off Sky Clark, who's a solid ball handler, and hopefully Mick Cronin will unleash Clark and turn him into more of a playmaker than a pass-first guard that he was demanding out of the Dylan Andrews, the Sky Clarks, whoever it might be. You can have Dent, who can do it all from a point guard perspective, and then you can shift Clark to the 2, and as Cronin was asking Clark to do all season, especially at the end, shoot it. And he hit a lot of threes in that second-round loss against Tennessee. If he wasn't in foul trouble, Sky Clark could have done a lot. So this is the projected starting lineup. Potentially, we'll see if we agree with this. Donovan Dent, Sky Clark, Trent Perry. Interesting. I don't know if I agree with that from ESPN's perspective, but Trent Perry, Eric Daly Jr., and Tyler Bilodeau. So that means Trent Perry would be the starting 3 guard. Maybe Jamar Brown can compete for that. He is coming from the Summit League mid-major level to the Big Ten, so maybe Brown would get first crack at it as a super senior, utilizing the JUCO eligibility from the NCAA waiver this last season, or maybe you go young with Trent Perry and let him run around, and that's how Cronin was able to convince his McDonald's All-American to stay for his sophomore season. Okay, so UCLA being a Big Ten competitor, right? A team that, if you look at this way too early top 10, top 25, UCLA is 3rd in the Big Ten, but they're in the top 10. Isn't that nuts? If you keep going, you'll see Alabama's 11, Auburn 12, Iowa State 13, Wisconsin 14, Kansas 15. And you can keep going until the end there. UCLA, with John Rothstein, he expected UCLA to be a top 5 team. If they had Aday Mara, this team would be unquestionably, I think, top 5. Now there are still some question marks, And you wonder what these pieces Cronin brought in, how they'll fit, how they'll contribute. But as I said in the last podcast, the rankings have plummeted. You look at the transfer portal rankings, you wonder, well, while this year's rankings so far are a lot lower than last year's, the continuity and the talent brought in from last season, the superstar brought in Donovan Dent, maybe the workable, more moldable pieces, if you will, that are brought in, like the Jamersons, the Bookers potentially, and Brown, could fit Cronin's rotation where he goes with the smaller rotation, works with it, and the Bruins can still be successful. I want to remind us, all of us, including myself, as crazy as I can get, UCLA, even before the month of January, before the Aday mania truly exploded, let's remind you who they beat in their 23-11 season this year. Of course, the early season loss to New Mexico, a la Donovan Dent. So you take the best player from the team that beat them for a full 40 minutes, you bring him to your team. That's going to be huge. But if you look at this last season, UCLA went to Oregon, who was consistently a top 25 team, had huge wins overall this season. And right after the hype of their Thanksgiving feast tournament victory in the Players Era Festival tournament, look at Oregon. UCLA went to Oregon and won. They were the first team to go beat Oregon. And they did that without Aday's presence. That was Eric Daly Jr. That was Dylan Andrews at the time, of course. Now UCLA, in my mind, is upgraded in that spot. But here we are. UCLA did that without any presence of Aday, and that's with Nate Biddle for Oregon, who was a 7-footer. So that was a big win. You go follow that up with a week later, a victory over Arizona, who were still figuring things out. They thought Krivas would be a bigger part of their lineup, and then Vasar came in. We're like, who's this guy? Well, he became one of the most coveted players in the transfer portal for Arizona. Caleb Love had an all right game, and the Bruins clamped down defensively, and that's 2 wins over tournament teams within a week's time where Aday didn't have any impact. All right, this was a UCLA team that was playing small. Then, of course, the tournament team, North Carolina, it was controversial. If UCLA actually beats North Carolina, there's no chance the Tar Heels make the tournament. No chance. But because UCLA blew this big lead on a neutral court, even without a big man in the post, North Carolina undersized, UCLA, okay, that was close to another tournament victory. You look at the Gonzaga game. UCLA beat another tournament team, a team that won their WCC tournament, and Gonzaga played really well against Houston in their NCAA tournament game. Almost knocked them off, and Houston went all the way to the national championship game and had a 12-point lead over the Florida Gators. Okay, so Gonzaga figured things out, and UCLA beat them on a neutral court. So UCLA had 3 victories away from home. I guess you can consider the Gonzaga game, a home neutral site game against the Zags. You mix in those 3 wins over tournament teams, and it's like, okay, am I blowing out of proportion the fact that Aday is not here? Possibly. I can accept that. If you're going to hate on me for that, I can understand that. But the difference between being a good team that wins at home, that can succeed in the Big Ten, versus next year I would expect you have to go to both Michigan and Michigan State. Those aren't going to be easy. Michigan's getting even bigger in the post, fixing things. If you need that 7-3 superstar or just some sort of post presence, that's the area of concern. And that was the area of concern coming into this last season that just finished out. UCLA has, I think, a lot more talent in their backcourt, and they'll have a lot more scoring and depth scoring, more options that way than last year, right? Stefanovic didn't have a lot going on. Dylan Andrews had a pretty poor shooting season. Sebastian Mack made incremental gains. Sky Clark took a while before he started to figure out his confidence. Now you're like, okay, you bring in Donovan Dent. You bring in a confident Clark who's now going to be at a school for the 2nd straight season. I think for the first time in his career, at least with the same coach in it, in the same system, where he's confident, closer to where he grew up. You mix in guys who are veterans, looking to make this their last year, capitalize their last season of eligibility for some of these guys. And hey, UCLA could be something special, even with not what we thought they could be, even without the likes of a true center. Even with Bilodeau and Daly at the center and the 4 spot, UCLA is still successful. Now, Cronin's going to have to work a rotation where that's not a 40-minute thing, because a 40-minute thing over the course of a long season, that didn't work for UCLA every single game. Yet, as much as I could be complaining back and forth, the Bruins still have talent with continuity talent, youngsters growing into new roles, and they brought in talent to replace guys that have left or get better at spots they needed to. And I'm hoping the Bruins can still do things. Might be one more player they can go after in the portal, still a couple of red shirts as well. Again, the expected expansion of roster spots to 15 on the men's basketball side, craziness. So Cronin could still fill out his roster. Maybe not full of players he's going to expect to play, but hey, the Bruins top 10? That's still not too shabby for a team we thought was losing it after Aday left. Not so bad if they're preseason projected as a top 10 team with what they have right now. Expectations still high in Westwood, which means Cronin better deliver. Speaking of delivering, Corey Close brought the UCLA women's program closer than ever to winning their first ever NCAA championship in women's college basketball. But now, a big key get for South Carolina, a couple of key departures for UCLA. What does that mean? And we'll tell you where Sebastian Mack went all next on Locked On UCLA. There is nothing like the live energy, the energy you feel at a live game. So whether you're catching last-minute MLB showdowns, the excitement of an NBA matchup, finding great seats at a great price, how do you do that? It used to be a challenge until I found Game Time. Game Time makes scoring those last-minute tickets easier than ever. Prices actually drop as the event gets closer, and with their all-in pricing, you can see the total cost up front. No surprises at checkout. I don't like those type of surprises at checkout. So Game Time makes it fit. You look at a last-minute deal. You can save up to 60% off buying last-minute tickets for sports, concerts, comedy, theater. I've told you before, when I was going to the East Coast and I was trying to go see Madison Square Garden, I'm like, dude, where am I going to get these best tickets? These are already top-tier, top-of-the-line tickets to get. Game Time had the cheapest. I saw the price right away. I knew where I was sitting. I could see it. And with the all-in pricing, I was like, dude, let's make it happen. And Game Time allowed me to go see basketball in one of the best arenas possible in the world. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Again, terms apply. Use the code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE, LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, here we go. Second segment. Let's start with more of Sebastian Mack finding a new home. This is a little bit of older news. Sebastian Mack, UCLA guard, who could have been an interesting role player for the Bruins heading into his junior season. Once Donovan Dent came through the transfer portal, you mix in the return of Trent Perry and made both the returns of Dylan Andrews and Sebastian Mack unlikely. Dylan Andrews was the first to head out, then Sebastian Mack. He found his new home in Missouri. So he's going to go play SEC basketball. I was taking a little quick tidbit into Missouri basketball. Of course, not the top of my knowledge, but seeing what they wrote up. The Tigers in this last season, a team that was top 40 in the NCAA in three-point shooting about 36-37%. So it looked like what they're missing was a lot of shooting guards who could space the floor. As we know here at UCLA, following the Bruins, whatever it might be, Sebastian Mack is not exactly going to help that. But I remember I was watching a pod from Sleepers Media, and they're trying to guess where Sebastian might go. And they're saying, yeah, that seems like a good fit at Mizzou. Ironically, definitely not ironically, but right on point, he's going to Mizzou. Fitting that, okay, what is Missouri going to do? It's a top-heavy, super deep SEC conference in basketball nowadays. Finds himself going to Missouri. So that's the new home for Sebastian Mack. You'll be seeing him. If you're watching SEC basketball, you're like, Sebastian Mack going to Missouri? Dylan Andrews going to Boise State? Like, some of these guys are already finding homes. You mix in William Kyle III going to Syracuse. Some of these Bruins have already found new places to go, and I wish them the best of luck, greatest successes. I just wonder what Mack's going to do. Is it going to be a Mack attack in a Tiger uniform, or are they going to have him learn how to shoot, get better at shooting the three-point shot, and just diversify his game? I wonder how that'll fit. Now, as to the big news that I teased on the women's side, UCLA women. I went over their way too early top 25 rankings. ESPN's Charlie Cream wrote about how it was unexpected. It's expected that Dugalich wouldn't return. Janiah Barker won't return. I'm like, okay, interesting. I haven't heard that anywhere. Barker hasn't done anything in the portal. You see Dugalich, same thing. You're like, okay, both those still have another year of eligibility. You wonder, are they going pro? What's the scoop? Nothing of that nature has happened between Dugalich or Barker at the recording of this podcast. But since I last dropped the other episode talking about how UCLA is the preseason number one, which they still will be, you've got Alina Arnasalo and Kendall Dudley, two key pieces of this last freshman class heading into their sophomore year. Two of the players that played the most in their freshman year by Corey Close, and they're not coming back. Talia Goodman of On3 said, all right, Arnasalo heading into the portal. That was shocking to me. Kendall Dudley. Kendall Dudley's more of a project from watching her, seeing her play, but clearly I thought she had some value, some athleticism defensively as a 6'2 forward, where I wondered, okay, maybe with some development, she could be a key piece for UCLA. Dudley heads to the portal. These were her numbers. A little less than 2 points per game, 2 rebounds per game. In some moments, played a lot of minutes, mostly defensively. Saw her most recently play 17 minutes in the Big Ten tournament against Ohio State. Got a lot of minutes. And sometimes would be asked to go guard some of the best players for short spurts. Dudley, I thought, would take a lot more to grow into a full, complete player if she was going to earn starting minutes at UCLA. But still, of the freshman class, she was number 2 in minutes this last year. Interesting that she went to the portal. Another one, Alina Arnasalo. I'm wondering what Alina Arnasalo, what's going on here as a freshman coming from Finland. UCLA relied upon her to play those first few games. Remember, Kiki Rice was not healthy to start this season. She had the shoulder injury, had to recover from that in the offseason, heading into the first week or two of the season. This was the Alina Arnasalo show, okay? And as a true freshman, she played 29 minutes, 8 points, and got 4 assists against Louisville in a neutral site. She had a lot of turnovers in that game, in those first couple of games against Louisville and Colgate, but she was thrown right into the fire for a UCLA team that at the time was top 5, top 7. And UCLA, without their starting point guard, who was a first-team All-Big Ten player, they were without her those first couple of games. She was like, all right, here, get some moments. And then Arnasalo started to develop. After 12 turnovers in her first couple of games, didn't have more than 3 for the next couple of months, next month or so, until the Bruins played Nebraska. This season, Arnasalo, after starting her first, 7 games, came off the bench, played 18 to 20 minutes, 5 points per game, sometimes a double-figure score, shot 27% from 3, not the most efficient, but relatively solid from the free throw line, couple of rebounds, dished out some assists, and the assist-to-turnover ratio slowly grew in her favor, not exactly 2-1, but decent for a UCLA team that, as we saw, top to bottom against UConn, top to bottom against any team, struggled to turn it over, okay? So there were moments when teams would clearly attack Arnasalo, but even Kiki Rice, Lauren Betts, they had their own turnover issues. So I wonder, with the entrance of Arnasalo into the portal, what does that mean? Is that Charlize Ledger-Walker is going to get more ball-dominant minutes? She's going to play the 2. You shift Hawkes to the 3, and then you play both Sienna and Lauren Betts as the 4 and the 5 as a double post? That would be interesting, and then maybe UCLA goes more zone. I'm not really sure how UCLA is going to work with the Betts sisters coming together, older and younger, senior and freshman. If that's going to be a 1-for-1, had them both out on the floor, because that's a top recruit in the country, Sienna is. You mix in Charlize Ledger-Walker, one of the top players in the portal the last 2 seasons, and UCLA had to wait a year before she was ready to play, recovering from her knee injury. Now, I wonder, is Janiah Barker returning after reading what Charlie Cream of ESPN wrote? I haven't seen anything that she would leave, but I wonder, it's not like she had an outstanding season that would put her draft stock so high. Maybe one more year winning a championship would boost that draft stock in the next year. I wonder. Or what it means for Jones or Ta'Niya Gardner. The other thing is, there's so many seniors next year. Jones. You mix in Hawkes, Kiki Rice, Lauren Betts. Even if Alina had a lot less minutes in this next year, and she spent the year developing at UCLA, she would be a clear-cut starter in my mind heading into 2025. Shocking, right? And I think Avery Kane also in the portal as well for UCLA. It's pretty crazy for the Bruins that they're trying to figure out. You've got Avery Kane, you've got Kendall Dudley, and Alina Arnasalo. 3 players who were key parts of this last year's class, all in the portal after a successful season, seeing what it takes to work hard and get ready and prepare to go deep in the tournament. Now, they all didn't get minutes. Kane, limited minutes. Key recruit coming from St. Joseph's High School in Santa Maria. Now, with Arnasalo leaving, Dudley leaving, those are players you thought maybe not next year, or in some cases next year for Arnasalo, in a year or two, would be the ones to take over the reins, take the basketball, run the show. And now Corey Close has got to go back. She had a pretty top-tier rated recruiting class heading into this previous offseason. And Arnasalo was one of those, unheralded top recruits. It was the best one that UCLA brought in on top of a top-tier transfer class. Now, South Carolina brings in Ta'Niya Latson, the top recruit, the leading scorer in all of Division I in the portal. So South Carolina just brought in a scoring guard, a 5'8", 25-point-per-game scoring guard. And that's going to electrify Columbia. UConn, the reigning national champion, even without Paige Beckers, is going to be a force. If Juju returns sooner, USC will be a late season force. And I forgot who the number 2 team was or who it might be. LSU is expecting the return of Flaji Johnson. Still, it's not a given that UCLA is going to win next year, but they are the preseason number 1. Now, this transfer exodus hurts them, I think, more for 2 years from now, takes away from the depth, and I wonder if Corey Close is going after pieces in the portal, veteran pieces, that can make this team better for now and for the future. But pretty shocking that UCLA has 3 players in the portal right now, all from their most recent recruiting class. I wonder what it means. Next, UCLA baseball leads the Big Ten. Got to talk about it next here on Locked On UCLA. It's early April 2025, and the UCLA Bruins in their inaugural year in Big Ten play, looking to win the Big Ten Conference. And the UCLA baseball team is looking to do just that after a couple of disappointing seasons for John Savage. Ever since COVID hit, UCLA was the number 1 overall seed in 2019, fell short in the Supers to a Michigan team, ironically, a Big Ten team. The Bruins have not truly been the same going deep in the tournament since now, with the potential to revitalize a program that was this close in the fall of last year to not even having a home baseball stadium, which is still an ongoing thing at Jackie Robinson. UCLA went from not having a baseball stadium, practicing at a local high school, to now leading the Big Ten. What's going on for John Savage's club? A team that is 25-6, 9-1 in their last 10 games, 10-2 in Big Ten conference play, leading the conference by winning percentage. Now, Iowa has more wins than UCLA. They're 12-3, but they have 1 more loss. So UCLA, by terms of winning percentage, leads it by an .833 winning percentage. Iowa's just at .800. Oregon is 10-5, and those are the only 3 teams in Big Ten play that actually have Big Ten championship aspirations in the regular season for now. What's the change between this year and last year? Well, obviously you can talk about competition. It's much colder in a lot of these Big Ten places where you're playing in early March, early April, but the Bruins have strung together some big-time wins, some late comebacks, and are hitting the ball much more. Now is the difference between playing Oregon State, Arizona, all these other West Coast schools who could mostly keep the Bruins from scoring runs. Last year's team, UCLA had 2 players hit 300 or better. That was AJ Salgado and this year's sensation, Rock Chalowski. You go into the stats for this year, you take a look at the numbers. So 2 players last year hit 300 or better. This year, UCLA has 5 players hitting 300 or better, over 300, not just exactly 300, over 300, and they're all mostly regular players, guys who have started 22 or more games. And of course, Rock Chalowski last year hit 308, 8 home runs. The difference for Chalowski this year, 372 batting average, 9 home runs, 10 doubles, basically surpassing last year's output. And UCLA's only played 31 games. You mix in Mulavai Levu, who's hitting 346. Salgado's doing better than his numbers last year. Those 3 guys have combined for 26 home runs of UCLA's 40. So they're hitting the ball out of the ballpark. A little bit with some power. You mix in probably some Big Ten ballparks. Last year, UCLA hit 43 home runs as a team. They hit 40 home runs this year, UCLA, compared in, 15 less games? I'm not sure if the Bruins are using the torpedo bats because they're using aluminum bats in college, but the Bruins have figured something out. They're swinging it much better, and whether it's the level of competition, the move to the Big Ten, a much easier non-conference schedule, the Bruins are turning it into victories. And now, mind you, UCLA in their schedule so far this year, their season opening series, they swept Cal Poly. Cal Poly's undefeated in the Big West right now. So they have a series sweep in utter dominant fashion against a team that's unbeaten in their own conference and is expected to send 2 or 3 teams to the NCAA tournament. A team that's unbeaten, UCLA has swept them. That's why those mid-February games that we forget about a month and a half ago, huge. UCLA dominated BYU in a midweek. Took care of business mostly in their weekend tournament in Texas. A win over ASU. Some wins over UConn and USC. Missed an opportunity against Vandy, but that's just a 1 game off. Dominating Michigan in a midweek for a Big Ten game. Doesn't count towards the standings, but they beat them 22-5. Surviving that 10-inning classic against Maryland on the road was huge. Beating a ranked Irvine team in a midweek, always helpful. UCLA swept Nebraska. Won this series against Indiana. Win against LMU. Sweeping Purdue on the road, beating Pepperdine, and then winning the series against San Diego, even though they lost the Sunday finale in 14 innings, huge. Now, UCLA, they don't have Iowa on the schedule, who is the team that's second in Big Ten play. Heck, they only have Oregon, while they do have to go to Oregon in a couple weeks, heading up on Easter weekend. UCLA's got to go to Eugene and battle for a potential first or second place in the Big Ten. Now, let's remind you, the Big Ten tournament is a little different. Very, very different. They play it in Omaha. So they play it at the home of the College World Series. They do. So you get a chance to be like, this is what we can taste in Omaha. Might be a lot earlier than you want, but they want to get back there. It's a 12-team tournament in Big Ten tournament rulebook. So 12 teams of the 17 make it. And if you're a 1 seed, the bracket is as follows. You get the 1 seed, the 8 seed, and the 12 seed. If you advance in pool play, you go to the semis and you can win it and get the automatic berth. It's from May 20th to May 25th. So a little over a month plus before UCLA has to go to Omaha, prepare themselves for a Big Ten tournament where if you're the 1 seed, you get the 8 seed or 12 seed. If you're the 2 seed, the 7 or 11. The 3 seed, the 6 or the 10. And right now, UCLA, if you're looking at the standings, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, that means you'd get Illinois or Michigan State. A couple of teams UCLA has beaten already this year. Looking at their schedule, this is who UCLA's beaten in the Big Ten. They've beaten the likes of Purdue in a conference series, Indiana in a conference series, Nebraska, USC, Maryland, Michigan, and Michigan State. They have 7 wins over Big Ten programs already. And they still have some more series to go. So out of 16 possible opponents, UCLA has victories almost over half the conference. And they still have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 series, 6 series to go. UCLA still has 18 games against conference opponents. And they almost have wins over half the conference already. Now, the problem with super conferences is you could play an entire schedule filled of conference games without any non-conference. So you mix in a midweek, a solo game in those weekend conferences. UCLA, man, oh man, they've got themselves quite the turnaround. They still have a big game, a midweek coming up against Oregon State. They host that game. A win over the Beavers would be huge. And one other thing, I was looking at different bracketologies. The latest one from Baseball America that I've seen clearly has UCLA in the field, but they have UC Irvine hosting it and UCLA going to UC Irvine with Stanford in a regional potentially. That would be a crazy opening round and a tough regional. Now, it's a little older of a release. It's about a week old from what I've seen from Baseball America. I've seen College Sports Madness, a little lesser known when it comes to bracketology stuff. I've looked at them for over a decade plus. They have UCLA hosting a regional, which would include Grand Canyon, include UC Irvine or Fordham. And the difference between UCLA winning the series against Irvine in the midweek, winning the Big Ten, is hosting a regional and having an outside chance to host a super, which you'd want to do after all this traveling. But at least hosting the regional, playing some local West Coast talent, could revitalize the energy towards the UCLA baseball program that's been pretty dormant the last 5 years. All right? Now they've made the tournament, but they haven't been on a run. They haven't done anything special. Not in a decade plus since they went to Omaha and won it. It's been a while since they had a lot of hype, like in 2019 when they had to survive LMU in the opening round in the regional, fight off and couldn't get past Michigan in the supers. It's time to get some energy back in that program. And if they can get to the College World Series, dare I say do something special, maybe get some funding for a stadium, or at least solidify that Jackie Robinson can be, the stadium that is, be the home for UCLA baseball for the future, right? So they don't have to worry about the local government or whatever it is, worrying about the VA affairs that owns the land that UCLA is leasing to use the stadium grounds, okay? That's why a big season is important, and why the Big Ten move is kind of good for a program like baseball or good for a program like softball, where they're expected to be top 3 in almost every season. They should dominate. And here UCLA is, year-to-year turnover after one of their worst years in the John Savage era, turning themselves into a Big Ten contender and might move themselves into a good potential run to Omaha. Maybe twice if you include the conference tournament. So we're excited for that. Hands up, Bruins fans. 8 clap time, baby. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. UCLA. UCLA. Fight, fight, fight. This has been Locked On UCLA. Like, comment, subscribe, download. We'll keep you up to date with everything transfer portal, more spring sports, spring practice, football-wise, basketball, everything. Here on Locked On UCLA. This has been Locked On UCLA. Zach signing off. Go Bruins.